The studio lights burned bright, casting a warm glow over the set of the Kelly Clarkson show. The audience buzzed with anticipation, their murmurs blending into a low hum as the cameras rolled into position. Kelly Clarkson, with her trademark warmth, sat poised on the edge of her chair, her smile wide but her eyes sharp, scanning the stage for her next guest. The crew had been prepping for weeks, knowing this episode would draw eyes. Jennifer Lopez, global icon, singer, actress, and business mogul, was about to take the stage. The air crackled with expectation, but beneath the surface, something simmered, something unspoken that only a few in the room could sense. Kelly leaned forward, her hands clasped, as the stage manager signaled the guest's entrance. The crowd erupted into applause as Jennifer Lopez stepped out, her presence commanding, her tailored white suit catching the light. She moved with the grace of someone who'd spent decades under scrutiny, every step deliberate, her smile polished but guarded. The two women exchanged a quick hug, the kind that's more performance than affection, and settled into their seats. The audience quieted, waiting for the banter that Kelly was known for, the easy charm that made her show a haven for celebrities. But today, the energy felt off, like a chord struck just out of tune. "Jennifer, it's so good to have you here," Kelly began, her voice bright but with an edge of curiosity. "You've been everywhere lately. New music, new films, that incredible Super Bowl performance. How do you keep up with it all?" It was a softball question, meant to ease Jennifer into the conversation, but her response was clipped, her smile tight. "You just do," she said, crossing her legs. "You push through. You know, it's the grind." The audience laughed lightly, but Kelly's brow furrowed, sensing the deflection. She pressed on, her tone still warm but probing. "Sure, but there's got to be a secret to balancing it all. Family, career, the spotlight. What's the trick?" Jennifer's eyes flickered, a fleeting moment of irritation that the cameras didn't catch but Kelly did. "No trick," she said, her voice cool. "You make choices. You prioritize. Not everyone gets that." The words hung in the air, sharp and pointed, and Kelly tilted her head, her smile faltering. The audience didn't notice, not yet, but the crew exchanged glances. Something was brewing, and it wasn't just the usual talk show pleasantries. Kelly, ever the professional, leaned back, her fingers tapping lightly on her chair. "Choices. Huh, that's interesting. Care to share what choices you've been making lately?" The question was innocent enough, or so it seemed, but Jennifer's posture stiffened. She adjusted her jacket, her movements precise, almost defensive. "I think people know what I've been working on," she said, her tone clipped. "The music, the movies, the brand, it's all out there." Kelly nodded, but her eyes didn't leave Jennifer's. "Right, but I'm talking about the personal side. You've been open about your life before, your relationships, your kids. Fans love that authenticity. Anything new you want to share?" The question was a trap, unintentional perhaps, but a trap nonetheless. Jennifer's jaw tightened, and, for a moment, the studio felt smaller, the air thicker. "I don't think that's what we're here to talk about," Jennifer said, her voice low but firm. The audience shifted, sensing the shift in tone. Kelly, caught off guard, tried to pivot. "Fair enough. Let's talk about the new album then. It's got such a personal vibe, almost like you're working through something. Care to dive into that?" Jennifer's eyes narrowed, and she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Kelly, not every song is a diary entry. Sometimes, it's just art." The rebuke was subtle but unmistakable, and Kelly's smile froze. The director, watching from the booth, signaled for a commercial break, but Kelly waved it off, her instincts kicking in. She wasn't done yet. The tension was palpable now, the audience hanging on every word, unsure if this was scripted drama or something real. Kelly leaned in, her voice softening but her eyes unyielding. "I get that, but your fans, they feel connected to you through your story. They want to know what's behind the art." Jennifer's laugh was sharp, almost bitter. Jennifer's laugh cut through the studio like a blade, sharp and fleeting, leaving an uneasy silence in its wake. The audience, still unsure whether this was part of the show's charm or something more, shifted in their seats, their applause hesitant. Kelly Clarkson, her face a mask of professionalism, leaned back slightly, her fingers still tapping rhythmically on the arm of her chair. She wasn't one to back down, not on her own stage, but the edge in Jennifer's voice had thrown her. The cameras zoomed in, catching the flicker of defiance in Jennifer's eyes, the way her shoulders squared, as if bracing for a fight. "Okay, let's pivot," Kelly said, her tone lighter but laced with determination. "Your new albums got this incredible energy, raw, powerful. I heard you wrote some of these tracks in the middle of a pretty intense time in your life. Can you talk about what inspired that?" It was a careful sidestep, an attempt to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but Jennifer wasn't having it. Her smile was gone now, replaced by a cool, measured stare. "You keep circling back to my personal life, Kelly," she said, her voice steady but pointed. "I'm here to talk about the work, the music, the film. That's what matters." The audience murmured, sensing the friction, and Kelly's eyes widened slightly. A flash of surprise before she masked it with a laugh. Fair point, she said, raising her hands in mock surrender. I just know your fans eat up the stories behind the music. Like that one track, Break the Silence. It's got this intensity. What was the spark for that? Jennifer's expression didn't soften. She leaned forward, her elbows resting on her knees, her posture almost confrontational. The spark, life, struggle, things you don't always put into words for a soundbite. You of all people should get that. The jab landed harder than intended, and Kelly's smile faltered. The audience caught it this time, a collective intake of breath rippling through the crowd. Kelly, a veteran of the industry, wasn't used to being challenged so directly. Not on her own show. Her eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed even. I do get it, she said, her tone measured. I've been through my own struggles, and I talk about them. That's why I'm asking. People connect to the real stuff. Jennifer, the use of her name felt deliberate, a subtle pushback, and the air between them crackled with unspoken history. Behind the scenes, the producer motioned frantically to the stage manager, whispering about cutting to commercial. But Kelly's eyes flicked to the side, a silent command to let it play out. She leaned forward now, matching Jennifer's intensity. Look, I'm not trying to pry, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. But you've always been so open, and now it feels like you're holding back. Why's that? Jennifer's lips pressed into a thin line, her fingers tightening around the armrest. Maybe because not every moment needs to be dissected for public consumption. She shot back. Maybe some things are just mine. The audience was silent now, the weight of the exchange settling over the room. Kelly tilted her head, her expression a mix of curiosity and defiance. I hear you, she said, her voice softening but not retreating. But you're in the spotlight, same as me. People want to know who you are, not just the polished version. Jennifer's eyes flashed, and for a moment it seemed like she might stand and walk off right then. Instead, she leaned back, crossing her arms, her voice low and cutting. You think you know me because you've seen the headlines. You don't. The words hung heavy, and Kelly's jaw tightened, her warmth giving way to something sharper. I'm not saying I know you, she replied, her voice steady but firm. I'm saying your fans want to. That's why they're here, she gestured. To the audience, who clapped tentatively, unsure whether to break the tension, Jennifer didn't acknowledge them. Her gaze stayed locked on Kelly, a silent challenge passing between them. The director, sensing the moment, teetering on the edge, finally called for a break, and the stage lights dimmed as the show cut to commercial. But the cameras didn't catch what happened next. The words exchanged off-mic as the audience buzzed with speculation. The commercial break hit like a pressure valve, the studio lights dimming as the audience's murmurs swelled into a chaotic hum. Crew members darted across the set, adjusting mics and whispering urgently, while the director's voice crackled through headsets, urging everyone to stay sharp. Jennifer Lopez sat rigid in her chair, her arms still crossed, her gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the cameras. Kelly Clarkson, usually the picture of warmth, leaned back with a tight smile, her fingers drumming a restless rhythm on her knee. The air was thick with unspoken words, the kind that linger after a fight you didn't see coming. Off mic, Jennifer's voice was low, barely audible to the crew nearby. You don't get to push me like that, she said, her eyes flicking. To Kelly, sharp and unyielding. Kelly's brow arched, her response equally quiet but firm. I'm doing my job, Jennifer. You signed up for this. The words were a spark, and for a moment, it seemed like the argument might reignite right there. In the shadow of the commercial break, a stagehand hovered nervously, unsure whether to intervene, but the director's signal to resume cut through the tension. The lights snapped back on, and the audience's applause roared to life, oblivious to the storm brewing on stage. Kelly straightened, her smile returning like a mask slipping into place. Welcome back, everybody, she said, her voice bright but strained, like she was forcing the cheer. We're here with the incredible Jennifer Lopez, talking music, movies, and everything in between. The audience clapped, but their energy was tentative. Sensing the undercurrent, Jennifer uncrossed her arms, her posture loosening slightly, but her expression remained guarded, her eyes never leaving Kelly. So, Kelly continued, her tone careful but probing, let's dive into your new film. It's a big departure from your usual roles, gritty, intense. What drew you to it? Jennifer exhaled, a subtle release of tension, and leaned forward, her voice measured. It's a story that matters, she said. It's about real people, real pain, not just some glossy fantasy. I wanted to do something that felt true. The answer was polished, the kind of response she'd given 100 times, but there was an edge to it, a challenge directed at Kelly. The host nodded, her smile tight. That's powerful, she said, and it's got people talking, especially about that one scene. You know, the one where your character just breaks. Was that hard to tap into? The question was a minefield, and Jennifer's eyes narrowed. Catching the subtext, Kelly wasn't just asking about acting. She was circling back to the personal, to the vulnerability Jennifer had already shut down. It's acting, Jennifer said, her voice flat. You find the truth in the moment. You don't need to live it to show it. The audience clapped lightly, but Kelly wasn't satisfied. She tilted her head, her eyes glinting with a mix of curiosity and defiance. Sure, but you bring so much of yourself to these roles. That scene felt personal, like you were pulling from something deep. Am I wrong? Jennifer's jaw tightened, and for a split second, her composure slipped, revealing a flash of raw frustration. You're reaching, Kelly, she said, her voice low but cutting. Not everything I do is a window into my soul. Sometimes a role is just a role. The audience shifted, their murmurs growing louder, sensing the clash. Kelly leaned forward, undeterred, her voice softening, but her words pointed. I'm just saying, your work hits harder when it feels real. Fans see that, they feel it. Don't you think they deserve to know what's behind it? The question landed like a gauntlet, and Jennifer's eyes blazed. She leaned back, her arms crossing again, her voice cold. They get my work. That's what they deserve. Not my life on a platter. The studio went quiet, the weight of her words settling over the crowd. Kelly opened her mouth to respond, but Jennifer cut her off, her voice rising just enough to command the room. You want to talk about real? Let's talk about how you keep digging, trying to make this about something it's not. The accusation hung in the air, and Kelly's smile vanished, her eyes locking with Jennifer's in a silent standoff as the tension reached a breaking point. The silence in the studio was deafening, a heavy pause that seemed to suck the air out of the room. Jennifer Lopez's words, sharp and unyielding, lingered like a challenge. Her eyes locked on Kelly Clarkson's with an intensity that made the audience hold their breath. Kelly, usually quick to diffuse tension with a laugh or a quip, sat frozen for a beat, her expression caught between shock and defiance. The cameras, relentless, captured every micro-expression, the slight twitch of Kelly's jaw, the way Jennifer's fingers tightened around the armrest. The crew exchanged frantic glances, the director's voice hissing through headsets to hold the shot. No matter how volatile it felt, Kelly broke the silence first, her voice calm but laced with steel. I'm not trying to make this something. It's not, she said, her eyes never leaving Jennifer's. I'm asking questions my audience wants answers to. That's the gig. The audience murmured, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably, caught in the crossfire of a moment that felt too raw for daytime TV. Jennifer's lips curved into a faint, almost mocking smile. Your audience, she said, her voice low and deliberate, doesn't need you to play therapist. They came for a show, not an interrogation. The words stung, and Kelly's eyes flashed, her warmth giving way to something harder. I'm not interrogating you, she shot back, her voice rising just enough to betray her frustration. I'm trying to have a conversation, Jennifer. You're the one shutting it down. The audience gasped softly, the tension now impossible to ignore. A few clapped, unsure if they were cheering for Kelly's boldness or simply reacting to the drama unfolding. Jennifer's smile vanished, her posture rigid as she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You want a conversation? Then stop pushing for something I'm not giving you. The exchange was a tightrope, and the studio felt like it was teetering on the edge. The producer, watching from the booth, motioned to cut to commercial again, but Kelly shook her head subtly, her eyes still locked on Jennifer's. She wasn't backing down, not in her own house. Okay, Kelly said, her tone softening but her words deliberate. Let's talk about what you do want to give. Your new project, the fashion line. It's bold, it's you. What's the story there? It was a lifeline, a chance to pivot, but Jennifer's expression didn't soften. She leaned back, her arms crossing tightly, her voice cool and measured. It's about owning who you are, no apologies. Something you might want to try sometime. The jab was subtle but vicious, and the audience let out a collective ooh, their murmurs swelling into a wave of excitement and unease. Kelly's smile twitched, a flicker of hurt crossing her face before she masked it with a laugh, sharp and forced. Oh, I own who I am, she said, her voice steady but her eyes burning. But I also know my job is to connect with people, not just push a brand. You're here because you want that connection, right? Jennifer's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, it seemed like she might let the question slide. But then she leaned forward, her voice cutting through the noise. I'm here because I have something to share, not because I owe anyone my story. The audience was fully invested now, their whispers turning into a low roar as they sensed the clash reaching a new peak. Kelly, her patience fraying, leaned in, her voice firm but controlled. Nobody's saying you owe anything, she said, but when you step into this space, people expect a piece of you. That's the deal. Jennifer's eyes flashed, and she uncrossed her arms, her hands planting firmly on her knees as if grounding herself. The deal? She repeated, her voice rising, sharp and incredulous. I don't make deals with my life, Kelly. I'm not here to spill my soul for ratings. The words hit like a slap, and the audience erupted. Some cheering, others gasping, the energy in the room chaotic and electric. Kelly's face hardened, her warmth gone, replaced by a steely resolve. She opened her mouth to respond, but Jennifer was already moving, her chair scraping back slightly as she stood, her movements sharp and deliberate. The director shouted to keep the cameras rolling, and the audience's noise swelled as Jennifer turned, her white suit catching the light, and took a step toward the edge of the stage, her intentions unclear but her anger unmistakable. Jennifer Lopez's sudden movement sent a jolt through the studio, the scrape of her chair echoing like a gunshot in the charged silence. The audience's murmurs erupted into a cacophony of gasps and whispers, their eyes wide as they watched. Her stand, her white suit stark against the warm stage lights. Her posture was rigid, her shoulders squared, but her face was a storm of barely contained fury, her eyes still locked on Kelly Clarkson. The host, caught off guard, froze mid-breath, her hands gripping the arms of her chair as if to anchor herself. The cameras swiveled, capturing every angle of the moment, while the director's frantic voice buzzed through the crew's headsets, demanding they hold the shot, no matter what happened next. Kelly recovered quickly, her instincts kicking in as she leaned forward, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "Jennifer, hold on, let's talk this out," she said, her tone a mix of authority and plea, trying to reel the moment back from the edge. The audience, now on the edge of their seats, fell silent, their anticipation palpable. Jennifer paused at the edge of the stage, one hand resting on her hip, her head turning slightly to meet Kelly's gaze. "Talk it out," she said, her voice low and biting, each word deliberate. "You've been talking enough for both of us." The accusation landed hard, and the crowd let out a collective ooh, their excitement teetering between awe and discomfort. Kelly's jaw tightened, her warmth replaced by a rare flash of defiance. "I'm doing my job," she said, her voice rising to match Jennifer's intensity. "You came on my show, you knew what this was. If you can't handle a real conversation, that's on you." The words were a dare, and the audience erupted, some clapping, others shouting, the energy in the room spiraling into chaos. Jennifer's eyes narrowed, her lips parting as if to fire back, but instead, she took a step back, her heels clicking sharply against the stage floor. "Handle it," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "I've been handling this industry longer than you've been hosting. I don't need this." The studio was a pressure cooker now, the tension so thick it seemed to hum through the air. The crew stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let the drama unfold. The director, sensing ratings gold, signaled to keep rolling, his eyes glued to the monitors. Jennifer turned fully now, facing Kelly, her expression a mix of anger and resolve. "You think this is about connection," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "This is about you wanting a moment, a headline. I'm not your prop." The audience gasped, their reactions a mix of shock and thrill, some whispering to each other, others craning their necks to catch every word. Kelly stood now, too, her movements sharp but controlled, her hands raised as if to calm the storm. "That's not what this is," she said, her voice firm but tinged with frustration. "I respect you, Jennifer, your work, your hustle, but you're acting like I'm the enemy here, and I'm not." The sincerity in her tone was undeniable, but Jennifer wasn't swayed. She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Respect," she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. "You call this respect? Digging for dirt, pushing buttons for claps. That's not respect. That's a game." The audience was electric, their reactions a chaotic blend of cheers and murmurs, some siding with Kelly's earnestness, others drawn to Jennifer's unapologetic fire. A stagehand hovered near the wings, ready to step in if things went further south. But Jennifer's next move stopped everyone cold. She reached up, unclipped her mic with a swift, practiced motion, and let it dangle from her jacket, the faint thud of it hitting her side amplified through the studio's speakers. "I'm done playing," she said, her voice steady. The audience erupted, some shouting her name, others calling for her to stay. But Jennifer's eyes were fixed on the exit, her steps deliberate as she moved toward the wings. Kelly, still standing, called after her, her voice raw with a mix of frustration and disbelief. "Jennifer, come on, you don't have to do this." But the words fell flat, swallowed by the roar of the crowd and the weight of the moment. Jennifer didn't look back, her silhouette sharp against the stage lights as she disappeared into the shadows of the wings, leaving the audience buzzing and Kelly standing alone. The cameras still rolling, capturing the stunned silence that followed. The studio was a whirlwind of noise as Jennifer Lopez vanished into the wings, her silhouette swallowed by the shadows. The audience's roar filled the void she left behind, a chaotic mix of cheers, gasps, and shouted questions, their energy feeding the drama that had just unfolded. Kelly Clarkson stood alone on the stage, her hands still raised as if trying to hold on to a moment that had slipped through her fingers. The cameras, relentless, zoomed in on her face, capturing the flicker of shock and frustration in her eyes before she forced a tight smile. The director's voice crackled through the headsets, urging the crew to stay on her, to milk every second of the stunned silence that followed Jennifer's exit. Kelly lowered her hands slowly, her shoulders squaring as she turned to face the audience. "Well, folks," she said, her voice steady but tinged with a raw edge, "that was unexpected." The crowd laughed nervously, some clapping, others still whispering about what they'd just witnessed. Kelly took a deep breath, her professionalism kicking in as she moved to the center of the stage. "We're gonna take a quick break, but stick with us, okay? We've got more to come." The director signaled for commercial, and the lights dimmed, the audience's buzz swelling as the crew scrambled to regroup. Offstage, the tension was just beginning to unravel. In the wings, Jennifer was already moving, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as a stagehand trailed behind, offering a water bottle she ignored. Her team, waiting in the green room, sprang into action as she entered, their faces a mix of concern and urgency. "What happened out there?" her manager asked, his voice low but insistent. Jennifer didn't stop, grabbing her phone from a table and scrolling through it with a focus that shut out the chaos around her. "I'm not doing this," she said, her voice calm but final. She crossed a line, and I'm not here for it. The room fell silent, her team exchanging glances, knowing better than to push her in this moment. Back on set, Kelly retreated to her dressing room during the break, her own team hovering as she sank into a chair. "She didn't have to go there," Kelly muttered, her hands running through her hair. Her producer, pacing nearby, tried to calm her. "You handled it like a pro, Kelly." The audience ate it up, but Kelly's eyes were distant, her frustration clear. "It wasn't supposed to go like that," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I wasn't trying to corner her, I just wanted something real." The producer nodded, but his focus was already on damage control, knowing the internet would explode the second the clip hit. When the show resumed, Kelly was back on stage, her smile brighter but her energy subdued. "All right, y'all," she said, addressing the audience with her usual warmth, though it felt forced. "We're moving on, because that's what we do. Let's talk about what's coming up next." The audience clapped, but their whispers continued, their phones already lighting up with posts about the clash. The segment shifted to a lighter topic, but the energy in the room was off, the ghost of Jennifer's exit lingering like a storm cloud. Meanwhile, Jennifer was already in a car outside, her team coordinating a swift exit from the studio lot. Her phone buzzed with messages, but she ignored them, staring out the window as the city blurred past. "They'll spin it however they want," she said to her assistant, her voice low but resolute. "Let them. I know my truth." The car pulled away, leaving the chaos of the show behind, but the ripple effects were just beginning. By the time the episode aired, social media was ablaze, fans and critics dissecting every word, every glance, turning the clash into a cultural moment. Kelly, back in her dressing room after the taping, scrolled through the early reactions, her expression unreadable. The show had gotten its headline, but at a cost neither woman had anticipated.